This week in game news, a lot of great things happened. We've got all the latest news, trailers, and more in this week's episode of Game News Update. Additionally, we have music provided by YouTuber G. Brittany. Take a listen and enjoy the show. If you're a fan of Age of Empires 2 and happen to have a copy of Age of Empires 2 HD on Steam, I have some very good news for you. An official expansion for the game is currently being worked on. This is the first I've heard of expansive DLC for an HD remake of a game that came out decades ago, and it's a really cool move on the part of the developer, which really seems invested in making sure that the game continues to grow. Right now, all we have is this screenshot which shows off some camel archers in the desert, but we'll be keeping an eye out for whatever this DLC turns out to be. We have some very good news for LEGO fans. The very first trailer for LEGO Dimensions has just hit the internet. Set to come out on September 27th, 2015 for the Xbox 360, Xbox One, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and Wii U, LEGO Dimensions is a LEGO game that incorporates real toys, rather like Skylanders. From a business perspective, this was possibly the smartest move that they could have made. People seem to love the collectability of toys in video games. For instance, the Amiibo from Nintendo have been massively successful. Then there's the Skylanders line from Activision. And then, too, there's Disney Infinity. People already love collecting LEGO sets. Combining two things that people love to collect is natural and brilliant. Besides being good business sense, however, LEGO Dimensions does look pretty fun. It is coming from Traveler's Tales, which has a fantastic reputation for making LEGO games, so I'm pretty hopeful for this one. My main concern is that it's not going to be very distinguishable from the rest of the LEGO games. Hopefully Dimensions does enough to set its gameplay apart from the rest of the games in the series. Earlier this week, Square Enix revealed a rather interesting number. The 2013 Tomb Raider reboot sold over 8.5 million games, making it the best-selling game in the franchise thus far. The game was met by much critical success, as well as a lot of love from the fans, and a sequel called Rise of the Tomb Raider is set to come out holiday of 2015. The game is what's being called a timed exclusive for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One. So while the game will only initially be available for those two platforms, eventually it'll probably come to PlayStation and PC.
A girl your age, you should be exploring new horizons. I'd like to know you're taking care of yourself. For many people, these traumas become a mental trap. They get stuck, like a ship frozen in ice.
While we're talking about Square Enix, they've just unveiled the next game in the Deus Ex franchise. Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, is the sequel to the critically acclaimed Deus Ex Human Revolution. Deus Ex Mankind Divided takes place in 2029, 2 years after the events of the previous game, in a world that is divided into haves and have-nots.
This must not go on. This injustice must end.
Those who have cybernetic augmentations, and those who do not. At current, the game is set to come out on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC, though there's no release date as of yet. If you're one of the folks who purchased NBA 2K14, I have some bad news for you. 2K Games has shut the game's servers down. As a result, the player save data has been lost. Now keep in mind, NBA 2K14 only came out last year. In spite of promises that player save data would be saved, well, it was lost. However, that's not the end of this story. 2K Games made a response in possibly the most embarrassing way. Specifically, 2K support has been sending this message to disgruntled users, saying, "Sadly, this may come as an inconvenience to some of you, and if so, we truly do understand and can feel how upsetting this may seem, as there always is a special bond that occurs between a player and their My Career save, but all good things must come to an end, and rest assured, your My Career or My GM went out while on top." As you can imagine, this patronizing message was met with the internet's blistering fury. As a result, 2K turned the servers back on, and NBA 2K14 will keep running online for another 9 months. This has been yet another lesson of the dangers of keeping everything online. Between this fiasco, the announced closure of OnLive last week, and the current controversy regarding the ESA and the EFF, in case you've not heard of what's going on, the EFF, or the Electronic Frontier Foundation, has alleged that the ESA, that is, the Entertainment Software Association, is taking steps to prevent the preservation of video games. This is because the EFF is looking to preserve abandonware, that is, abandoned software. The EFF is seeking an exemption to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act's anti-circumvention preventions, which are in Section 1201, in order to help preserve games which may have been online only. For instance, let's say that Activision Blizzard somehow manages to burn through all of its money. Of course, this is an imaginary hypothetical situation, as we all know Activision Blizzard won't burn its money, but will most likely drown it. But the point still stands. Assuming they've managed to get through all their money sometime before the heat death of the universe, World of Warcraft will have to shut down. That means there will be no way to play World of Warcraft unless you mod the game. Theoretically speaking, it is possible to do this. In fact, practically speaking, it has been done. At current, there are pirate World of Warcraft servers that exist. This situation, essentially, seems to be the ESA's bone of contention. According to them, allowing this exception in the DMCA would undermine the fundamental copyright principles on which our copyright laws are based, and that it would also somehow set a bad precedent. That according to them, hacking, an activity closely associated with piracy in the minds of the marketplace, is lawful. It's a spiny issue with regards to intellectual property, as it could go either way. On the one hand, imagine what would happen to the games of a company that depended exclusively on the soon-to-be-defunct OnLive for distribution. Those games would be as good as digital dust in the wind. Besides the fact that people who purchased those games wouldn't be able to access them, the game itself would be lost forever. Nobody would be able to play it. Imagine if the early film industry was quite so opposed to the preservation of movies. Perhaps, in the short-sighted interest of selling more celluloid, they created films that disintegrated after a few months. Thus, in a couple of years, the only evidence that a movie happened are posters and a few memories in the minds of moviegoers. Of course, this is a little bit of hyperbole, but video game archivists are facing a similar dilemma. If they don't have a way to circumvent the DRM of today's games, what happens when disc rot sets in? Believe it or not, CD-ROMs, DVDs, and Blu-rays all have a shelf life. Nice as it would be to have these games last forever, they can't, and they won't, unless measures are taken today. On the other hand, there are some very serious implications to consider with regards to piracy. For instance, are people more likely to pirate games simply because a loophole in the law allows for the preservation of games? Right now, it seems that's not actually the case. The reason for this is twofold. First, because pirates don't tend to respect the law very much. The second is because game piracy is actually being well controlled, not by DRM, but by affordable prices and good practices. Much video game piracy occurs in countries where it's difficult to obtain games legally. Hence, the protections that are supposedly afforded by DRM don't seem to work in these places. Game piracy still does and will continue to exist, and it's highly unlikely that an exception made for the people who are supposed to be preserving games is going to change that. The ESA, of course, doesn't have much of a large interest in preserving games so much as it does in selling them. The reason for this is because the ESA wasn't set up as some sort of charity to help the games industry move forward. Rather, it's a coalition between industry giants. And pray tell, what have the industry giants been selling over the last few years? Did I hear HD remasters? I rest my case. In significantly happier news, the school management game No Pineapple Left Behind has just been announced. The game is named for an unfair test that was given to students some while back that involved a very stupid story with talking fruits. The questions on the test were incredibly confusing, and the whole thing was a point of controversy for a good long time. In No Pineapple Get Behind, you play as a principal, and it's your job to manage the staff and finances of the school. An evil wizard has changed all the children in the school into studious pineapples, which is fantastic, but they keep turning back into children. As we all know, pineapples are significantly easier to manage than human children. While this game sounds slightly cynical, I do rather like the idea. The game is currently in alpha, and it's set to be released on Mac, PC, and Linux, and there's no word yet on a release date. If you're a fan of point-and-click adventure games and/or Homestuck, you're going to want to take a look at Hiveswap. For a bit of background, the game was kickstarted in October of 2012, and it's coming from Andrew Hussey, the creator of the Homestuck and Problem Sleuth webcomics. The game's premise is that a young girl named Joey Clare discovers a teleporter in her attic, and she winds up on the alien planet of Alternia. Hiveswap is set to be released sometime in mid-2015 for Mac, PC, and Linux. Another game that caught my eye this week is the sandbox game Windward. Now, Windward is, from what I'm hearing, a fair bit like Sid Meier's Pirates. Right now, Windward is available on Steam through the magic of early access. In Windward, you play as a captain of a ship. You sail around profiteering and fighting other ships. You can play either as a pirate captain, or as something a little bit more honorable. You can trade for resources, you can do quests, and there's also a pretty big emphasis on exploring, as the worlds in the game are procedurally generated. Windward is definitely a game I'll be checking out. Even though it's not finished quite yet, thus far it's gotten fantastic feedback. The full game is set to come out on May 12, 2015 for Mac, PC, and Linux. Something truly bizarre that I stumbled across this week is a game called We'll Fight for Food. You just have to take a look at the trailer because it's really weird.
Good evening, my name is Wilberforce Pfeifferfood of Waterville University. Today I'll be teaching my lecture on conflict resolution and problem solving in a post-luchador era. Please take notes, I have a very fragile ego. Now my assistant has come upon a problem very common in these fraught modern times. A homeless man has built a shambling mildew fortress on a responsible homeowner's lawn. Now, as my assistant is a complete stranger to both of these people, naturally it is his responsibility to solve their problem for them. There are many valid strategies to choose from. Yes, my favorite, the diplomatic approach. Now, the purpose of any conversation is to find out what your partner wants, really wants, deep down, and trick them into thinking you're going to give it to them. You do this by selecting a body language, an opinion, and a tone that is consistent deep down with what they want to hear. Now, conversation is more of an art than a science. In your case, it might help to think of it as finger painting. Now, don't expect to blow them over with one bon mot, but repeat the same message enough times in enough different ways, and eventually they will cave to your every will. Just promise to use your newfound powers for good. That's what I want to hear. Wink, wink. Wink, wink. Option 2, bit controversial. You have a conversation with them by striking them with your fists. I did say it was controversial. Or, and this is a bit of a bold suggestion, but you could strike that other person. The other one we mentioned a bit. You could just strike whoever you want, actually. You are the self-appointed sheriff of the entire universe. Everyone's problems are yours to solve. So, you might as well solve them whatever way is most convenient for you personally. Yes, alright. Good form. Well, that just about wraps up today's lecture, but, oh dear. Well, yes, I suppose it could just be the Jim Crikey out of absolutely everybody, but... Well, it's just that seems like a bit of a waste of the $60,000 you spent on this course, to be honest.
If you own the shiny new 3DS with extra processing power, you'll be pleased to know that Xenoblade Chronicles 3D has just been released. Xenoblade Chronicles 3D is a remake of the original Xenoblade Chronicles, which came out on the Wii, and it was a fantastic game, but unfortunately it didn't quite get all the audience it deserved. In the game, you play as a guy named Shulk, who lives in a beautiful fantasy land that's unfortunately seen lots and lots of war. In the game, your goal is to finally put an end to it. If you own a new Nintendo 3DS, this game is definitely a must-have.
Meet this year's legendary Heropon Ricky Power! Heropon saves
Leave it to me. By the light of the Monada, I will stop them.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Endless pools are an incredible alternative to traditional pools, making it easy and inexpensive to swim at home. Call our toll-free number for a free idea kit. Endless pools are simple to install, easy to maintain, and economical to run. Swim or exercise against a smooth current that adjusts to any speed or ability. Perfect for year-round health, fitness, and relaxation. Call our toll-free number or visit our website for your free Endless Pools idea kit.
If you've ever wanted a generic free-to-play fantasy RPG that you play in 10 to 15 second spurts on your smartwatch, fantastic news, Runeblade is coming to the Apple Watch late April of 2015. Right now, all we have is a teaser trailer and a press release that doesn't really provide very much information, aside from the fact that the world of Runeblade is one of high fantasy, etc., etc. You play as the High Priestess of the War Mages, etc., etc., etc. The only feature of Runeblade that really caught my attention was that it was designed to be played in 5 to 15 second bursts. That's interesting enough to make me curious as to the nature of the gameplay, but I'll be honest, it's probably not enough for me to keep a close eye on the project. You may have heard of 9 Studios. They're the folks behind the MOBA God Factory Wingmen, and they're currently working on a Kickstarter for a game called Outward. According to 9 Outworld is an open-world RPG with a focus on the life of an adventurer, not, however, a legendary hero. A few of the key features listed on the Kickstarter page caught my eye, such as the dynamic quests that continue with or without you. So if you fail to take on a quest, well, consequences happen. I'll be honest, it does sound as though the premise of the game has been done before, namely in Ultima. However, I'm curious to see what 9's take on the game will be. Additionally, it seems to combine the elements of a Western fantasy RPG with those of a survival game. You have to pitch tents and wait out harsh weather in order to avoid dying. This Kickstarter has a goal of about $120,000 USD. At the time of our coverage, they've raised nearly $20,000 of that goal, so there's a good chance that they'll make it, seeing as they've just started. Personally, I'm curious as to how the game will come out. Kickstarter, as of late, seems to have been pretty good to fantasy RPGs. Divinity, Original Sin, and Pillars of Eternity are 2 Kickstarter RPG success stories, so I do have hope for this one. Additionally, 9 does have a pretty good reputation, so chances are they'll do a good job with the game. Another Kickstarter that caught my eye was for a game called Stellar. Now, Stellar is a procedurally generated space shooter. What sets this one apart is the way that it swaps perspective between 2D and 3D. It almost seems like a more modern take on Asteroids if Atari did creative things with its IP. The game mashes up classic arcadey space shooting with randomized roguelike elements. Besides the locations in the universe, even the weapons of the enemy ships will be randomized. What also sounds cool is that you can assimilate the weapons and ships of other aliens. You see, the story in the game is that you're an alien and your goal is to take over the entire universe. How successful you are, well, your mileage may vary. The developers are looking to raise $10,000 in order to further improve their game, add additional content, and generally polish the experience. They are aiming to release it January of 2016 for PC. If you're a fan of Smite, but you've not been keeping up with the heroes, well, good news. Medusa has just come to the game. As you might guess, the ultimate ability of everybody's favorite Gorgon is Petrify. When she removes her mask, she delivers a powerful blast from her Gorgon gaze, and apparently it stuns enemies for a couple seconds. While I am a little bit disappointed that she doesn't actually petrify players, I suppose this might have been a little bit too dangerous to include in the game, so it was left out. Have you ever wanted to play a bullet hell game in first person? Well, now's your chance. Tower of Guns has just been released for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. It's a game about dodging tons and tons of projectiles, all in first person. It's a very pretty looking game. Personally, I'm drawn to the kind of dirty, cel-shaded look. Besides the neat aesthetic, the gameplay itself looks pretty fantastic as well. The game has also been out for a while on Steam for Mac, PC, and Linux. It's gotten some really fantastic reception. As you may know, here at Blackman and Robin, one of the things that we love to do is to hold giveaways. Our latest giveaway was for a game called Iron, which is very, very difficult, perhaps to a fault. we decided to ask our fans about frustrating experiences that they've had in games, and we got quite the response. One of our favorites came from CherryPie55 on Instagram, who says that all the LEGO games have frustrated him. He swears that the puzzles made no sense, and that he spent like 7,628,273,738 hours on them. That's a lot of frustration. For a bit of perspective, it works out to nearly 800,000 years. Give or take a few hundred. I don't know how anybody can possibly spend that long being frustrated by a game, but this guy deserves to play something else before the heat death of the universe arrives. So, CherryPie55, you're getting a Steam key for Iran. This, however, does not mark the end of our Steam keys. We're also giving away a key for Iran via our 365-day giveaway on blackmanandrobin.com, so if you'd like another shot at an Iran key, just check us out over there. To wrap up, we have a couple quick bits of news. First off, Bastion has come to the PlayStation 4. In case you've not heard of Bastion, all you need to know is that it's from Supergiant Games. It's a fantastic ARPG in which an old man narrates your every action, and it's set in a very beautiful post-apocalyptic world. Seriously, post-apocalyptic and beautiful don't have to be mutually exclusive, as the art in Bastion proves. Also, the soundtrack is absolutely stellar. If you've not already played the game on the Xbox 360, PC, Mac, or Linux, go ahead and grab it on the PS4. You won't be making a mistake. Additionally, now live on blackmanandrobin.com are our reviews of the game Out There, which is a roguelike space game that's a bit like FTL, but a lot more melancholy. It's more along the lines of Sunless Sea, as well as our review of Axiom Verge, which is absolutely fantastic and is being called a love letter to the original Metroid. So do yourself a favor and check these out, and also be sure to check out G. Brittany Violin on YouTube. Her stuff is fantastic, and she tends to do lots of covers from JRPGs, which is pretty cool. Well, that's it for this week's game news. Be sure to follow at Blackman and Robin on Twitter for all the latest game news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Be sure to follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my other views.
Thanks for watching. Follow me at G. Brittany Violin on Twitter for requests or leave a request below. See ya!